This committee must have enough time to fully consider Senator Sessions' record, to evaluate his answers to our questions, and to determine what kind of Attorney General he will be if confirmed. Many, many millions of Americans are deeply concerned about what the future will bring. That's a hallmark of what happened this past Saturday in the march. The least we can do is tell them that we're being as careful as possible in who we place in charge of making these important decisions. For every woman and man who marched over the weekend, we owe it to them.
That's California Senator Dianne Feinstein making her case to stall the confirmation vote on Senator Jeff Sessions to be the next U.S. Attorney General. Although Senator Feinstein credits the Women's March for pushing the vote to next week, the NAACP certainly played a role there as well. Earlier this month, multiple branches held sit-ins and demonstrations around the nation to protest Sessions' nomination to become the next AG. Let's go right to Cornell Brooks. He is president and CEO of the NAACP. Cornell, what's interesting there is Feinstein, her office says she may very well vote for Sessions. Saying they've only received some 5,000 calls, on this particular deal here. Do you think any Democrats will have any guts when it comes to opposing Sessions? When you look at his record on civil rights, on voting rights, it's absolutely atrocious.
I hope so, and we plan so. And I would note this. We have several senators whose voicemails have been full for days on end. We know that the Capitol operator has been inundated with calls. We know that our branches, our units all across the country, our partner organizations have been slamming the phone lines. Why then is it that we have an Attorney General nominee who has campaign-style commercials running in blue states and red states if they are not worried? They are in fact concerned. And the reason they're concerned is because this nominee carries on his back a record that goes back decades in terms of racially offensive comments, but more importantly, a legislative and prosecutorial record that makes it clear that he's hostile to civil rights. Hostile to civil rights in terms of mouthing the myth of voter fraud while saying nothing about voter suppression in his home state. His one notable example in terms of prosecution of voting rights has everything to do with prosecuting 3 civil rights workers where it took a jury less than 4 hours to find them not guilty, and then a Congress in which he serves gives them congressional gold medals for their civil rights activism. This is an ugly record, and for any Democratic senator, any senator, Republican or Democrat, to vote for this, to sanction this, particularly at this moment in history, where we have a president about to issue some kind of an executive order lending credence to the notion of voter fraud while there is rampant voter suppression, as attested to by the federal courts.
Yeah, White House spokesman Sean Spicer actually declare from the podium the stellar, exemplary record of Jeff Sessions when it comes to civil rights. I'm sorry, that's probably somewhere along with Trump's investigators, Obama's birth certificate, and the evidence of 3 to 5 million votes. That can't be found anywhere.
It can't be found anywhere, and let us note this. The responsibilities of the Attorney General going back to 1789 have nothing to do with validating, supporting, documenting conspiracy theories. The Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the United States is charged with responsibility of prosecuting violations of statutes and crimes, not supporting conspiracy theories. And what I mean by that is if you have Jeff Sessions, Senator Sessions, lending support to this notion of voter fraud while denying the reality of voter suppression, while you have federal courts one after another attesting to the fact that voter suppression is real. In the Fourth Circuit, a conservative circuit where I clerked many years ago as a young lawyer, saying that the North Carolina State Legislature engaged in intentional racial discrimination. And in Texas, the Fifth Circuit finding a voter ID law having to violate the Constitution and the Voting Rights Act. The point being here is this Attorney General nominee is categorically, globally unfit to hold the office.
Monique, I want to go to you. Shelley, go to my iPad. This is from The Nation. In 2013, Jeff Sessions, Donald Trump's nominee for AG, cheered the gutting of the Voting Rights Act, calling it, quote, good news for the South. He then said, quote, if you go to Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, people aren't being denied the vote because of the color of their skin, unquote, when the federal court has said North Carolina Republicans had a laser-like focus to limit voting opportunities for black folks. The federal court ruled that.
Right, and that's the important part that I also have heard Dr. Barber discuss plenty of times. When you're talking voter suppression, you're not talking allegations. You're talking facts. You're talking findings by a court of law. That means civil rights organizations and individual citizens have done their job to take it through the court system and have prevailed. And with those findings, we then, Republicans and Democrats, we the country, have to look at voter suppression and do something about it. Jeff Sessions could be a nice guy. They had all those people paraded out there at his confirmation who were talking about, when I worked for him, he was really nice to me, and when my son was born, he was the first one to stand at the door. I don't care. I don't mind having lunch with Jeff Sessions. I don't want him to be the Attorney General because his record, not just 30 years ago, but last year, is horrible on civil rights.
Paris, quote, the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, Fourth Circuit, as Cornell said, they, quote, targeted African Americans with almost surgical precision. He said people not denying the right to vote in Georgia. Georgia was found to have illegally purged tens of thousands of voters who were disproportionately people of color. Texas's voter ID law declared discriminatory by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. Why should Jeff Sessions get a pass and be the Attorney General with this horrible record when it comes to voting rights?
I don't think those issues that came up were responsible, Senator Sessions was directly responsible for those things that happened in Georgia and—
Quote from Senator Jeff Sessions, quote, Shelley, show my iPad, quote, if you go to Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, people aren't being denied the vote because of the color of their skin. That is that's a lie.
What I'm saying, Roland, is Senator Sessions, as the senator from Alabama, was not directly responsible for what happened in Georgia and North Carolina.
So did Senator Jeff Sessions—
Let me finish my point.
Okay.
So the senators at the confirmation hearing should point out those facts and ask him to respond to them.
They did, and he said he had a great record.
And those commercials,
but he is responsible. He is responsible. Here's how he's responsible. When the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act, the Senate was presented with the opportunity to back the Voting Rights Advancement Act, to fix the act. He, as a senator with a vote, has a responsibility for fixing a problem that is known to exist. Voter suppression, known to exist in his state. How do we know that? We know it because the Justice Department has, over the years, blocked violations of the Voting Rights Act through preclearance, through years before the Shelby decision. After the Shelby decision, we've seen in state after state after state, just as Roland has lifted up, in Georgia, in North Carolina, in Texas, over and over again, he has had opportunities day in and day out to fix the Voting Rights Act, and he has failed. He has failed. And not only has he failed in terms of voting for a fix, he has denied the existence of the problem. And so we cannot give him a pass on this. We got to be real clear on this. He's responsible as a senator, he's responsible as a former prosecutor, and he is certainly responsible as someone who wants and seeks the job as the chief law enforcement officer of the United States.
And Giuliani, he didn't say anything about the closing of 31 Department of Motor Vehicle offices in Alabama, which had an impact on people being able to get voter ID. Giuliani,
He has not been a champion at all of voter access, and that's what we have to look at. Monique, no, I would not have lunch with him because I don't break bread with folks who have hostility toward my people. And
I don't think it's hostility towards our people.
Well, there is when you deny people access, the basic right to access, to register to vote with the motor vehicles offices and others. When you see what's happened, when the Supreme Court does the Shelby thing, and he basically, that's in his backyard.
Oh, in fact, Shelley, go to my iPad. This is the same piece in The Nation. Quote, Shelby County, Alabama, never had a history of denying the vote, certainly not now, Jeff Sessions said. There is racial discrimination in the country, but I don't think in Shelby County, Alabama, anyone is being denied the right to vote because of the color of their skin. They report, in fact, Shelby County found itself in court after the city of Calera ousted the only black city council member by reducing the percentage of African Americans in his district from 71 to 30%, a textbook example of the type of voting discrimination that the Voting Rights Act was designed to stop.
The sole member, Roland, the sole member of that city council with masterful gerrymandering, which is what they have excelled in, gerrymandering.
Final comment, Parrish, or do you have one?
Yeah, I do have a final comment. I think we have to be very careful how we characterize people without fact. And
I just laid out facts. I'm quoting the man.
We have to be very careful how we characterize people and their character. But I will just say...
I didn't characterize, no, I didn't say character. I am speaking specifically. This is what he said. This is the fact. You laid out in terms of what he could do, what he didn't do. Paris, those are undeniable facts. This is not Kellyanne Conway and alternative facts. These are facts. True or false, yes or no?
And his record is equally poor on the Muslim community and disenfranchisement of gay and lesbian community. Yeah. It's bad across the board, and all of those things affect our people.
Kickstart your day at 7 and get the news you need from the perspective you want. NewsOne Now with Roland Martin, every weekday morning at 7 on TV1.